Starting us off in at number 10, Black Flash. The actual physical representation of death for all speedsters, Black Flash is the Grim Reaper of the Speed Force. Making his first appearance in The Flash Volume 2 number 138 back in 1998, he was seen before the deaths of several speedsters including Barry Allen, Johnny Quick, and Bart Allen. But he also tried to return Wally West to the Speed Force, but was unsuccessful, taking Linda Park instead, Wally's girlfriend. Black Flash eventually did return to try to claim Wally again, freezing time for everyone without a connection to the Speed Force to do so, but thanks to the combined efforts of multiple speedsters, Wally was able to race Black Flash until the end of time, causing death to have no meaning. The CW Black Flash, which was really just Hunter Zolomon aka Zoom, was killed during season 3 when Savitar lured him out of the Speed Force and then Killer Frost froze him, resulting in her first kill that actually turned out to be her ex as well. Dare I say, ice cold. But that didn't stop the Speed Force anyway, since later on Barry Allen returned in the Flash Rebirth storyline in the comics, becoming the new Black Flash. So this is also a version of the original Flash as well as a separate entity. In at 9, Inertia. The bitter feud between the Allen family and the Thawne family would span generations. Even in the 30th century, President Thawne sought to recruit Bart Allen in his revenge campaign against the Allens, since Bart was half Thawne himself. When that failed, Thawne mixed Bart's DNA with Thawne's genetic material to create a speedster clone who he named Thaddeus Thawne. Whereas Bart grew in a hyper-accelerated world, Thaddeus' childhood was the exact opposite, because of course it was, he's the reverse. His development was super slow, which led the young speedster to become more calculated and methodical. Thaddeus was also taught to hate the Allen family, and Impulse in particular. In addition to this modification, Thaddeus' growth and development was slowed. This is in contrast to Bart's accelerated development. However, after killing Bart, Wally West had other plans. Upon hearing of Bart's death, an enraged Flash hunted Inertia down. Though he thought of killing him, Flash decided instead to do something worse. He used his abilities to slow Inertia's movements down to the point where he was totally immobile, essentially a living statue, and then he placed Inertia on display at the Flash Museum, facing statues of Bart Allen as Impulse and Kid Flash. He could still think, see, and hear in normal time, but was frozen in place. Inertia was then just doomed to spend an eternity in a state of near total paralysis, staring at images of the guy he killed. In at 8, Godspeed. August Hart is the former detective partner of Barry Allen. August was the only witness to Barry's accident that turned him into the Flash, and while going after a criminal organization called the Black Hole, August was struck by lightning during a Speed Force storm in Central City. August became the ruthless vigilante known as Godspeed, and got his revenge on the man who he suspected to have killed his brother. He had given up on the justice system since his brother's killer had gone free, and with his newfound power, had the ability to become judge, jury, and executioner. August realized after he had gotten his powers that he also had the ability to steal others' speed, though for a time he could only do it by killing them. He practiced this skill to be able to do it non-lethally as well though. With his new godlike speed, August was able to move so fast as to create duplicates of himself at any given time, allowing him to give the illusion that he and Godspeed were different people, which is pretty damn sick, considering the alternatives are Speed Mirage and Time Remnant, which aren't exactly the same thing but are still fairly similar. And in 7, Earth X. There's little known about the Earth X version of Barry Allen. Known as Blitzkrieg in this reality, he's a fascist version of the Flash working alongside Dark Arrow and Overgirl, the Oliver Queen and Kara Zor-El of Earth X, who are also married, but that's a story for another day. In the Arrow vs. Crisis on Earth X crossover, Earth X Barry is actually nowhere to be seen. Instead, he's replaced by Reverse Flash, the Eobard Thawne of Earth 1. Even though on the animated show The Ray, which takes place on Earth X, there is a fascist Barry, so what happened? It's largely assumed that between his last appearance in the show and in the crossover, that Thawne arrived and took his chance to kill at least a version of Barry, even if it wasn't his own. Hence why the other Earth Xers were so trusting of Thawne, since he had bested their Barry. I don't know how this Barry got his powers without the particle accelerator, but what I do know is that even the Joker refused to work with the Red Skull when he realized that he was actually a fascist and not some kook in a wildly inappropriate costume, saying that he may be a psychopath, but he's an American psychopath, or something along those lines. So, Reverse Flash is worse than Joker confirmed. Like, this wasn't even a Reverse Flash who was raised in the fascist life. He just wanted to help out, which is messed up as hell. And at 6, Zoom. Hunter Zolomon was a serial killer from Earth 2, also known as the maniacal super speedster known as Zoom. Having gotten tired of being the villain, Hunter decided to also become the hero after capturing Jay Garrick, the Flash from Earth 3, masquerading as Jay to gain Barry Allen's trust. When he was 11, Hunter saw his father kill his mother. Hunter's father ended up in jail, and Hunter was raised in the foster care system since no relative wanted him. Hunter later became a convicted serial killer and was going through electroshock therapy when Earth 2 Harrison Wells' particle accelerator exploded underground. underground. This ended up connecting him to the Speed Force and he escaped. Solomon killed some police officers on his way out and left one to tell his story. The one police officer said he saw a man zooming around, giving Solomon the alias of Zoom. Zoom later then killed that police officer in his house. Halfway through into number 5, the rival. Edward Claris is the rival, the archenemy of Golden Age Flash Jay Garrick. Claris was a chemistry professor at the university attended by Jay Garrick. He believed that he had recreated the formula that gave Garrick his speed. Bitter at the rejection of his research claims by the scientific community though, Claris became a criminal wearing a darker version of the Flash's outfit, the original Reverse Flash. The effects of this version of the formula however proved to be temporary and he was defeated when it expended. Decades later though, following the reformation of the Justice Society of America, Claris was retrieved from the Speed Force, because he had been put in there at some point, by the interdimensional supercriminal Johnny Sorrow, who invited him to join the new Injustice Society. Now composed of pure speed energy, Claris possessed Garrick's friend and fellow Golden Age speedster Max Mercury to get the Flash's attention. Rival committed a series of swift, gruesome murders at locations that, when mapped out, would spell out a message. We don't talk about the Arrowverse version, though. Like, I know his suit was meant to be similar to Daniel West's Reverse Flash, but come on. And for Johnny Quick. Johnny Allen, alias Johnny Quick, is a criminal speedster from Earth 3. Together with his girlfriend and partner in crime Atomica, he was a member of the crime syndicate. Johnny Allen was a high-profile criminal on the run with his equally criminal girlfriend, cornered on the roof of Central City's Star Labs. Allen was struck by a bolt of lightning which shattered the roof, and the duo fell into the lab space below, with Allen landing amid some chemicals. Obviously, this is the thing that ended up granting him his super speed, and he went on to become a super criminal alongside his girlfriend who had also been empowered. He took on the name of Johnny Quick, while his girlfriend took on the name of Atomica. The couple joined the crime syndicate at some point after this. Johnny Quick, as he now called himself, ran through Central City answering to no one, until the day the White House burned, around the time of Darkseid's incursion onto Earth Prime. The being that had destroyed Ultraman's Krypton came to Earth, and an alliance of super criminals formed to find a way to safety. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Red Death. Red Death is a speedster that is an evil combination of Batman and the Flash, which already sounds terrifying, but wait till you hear his story. The Bruce Wayne of Earth 52 started off fighting crime with Robin, but Robins kept dying left, right, and center. So understandably, Batman got darker and darker, becoming more extreme with his, let's call them methods. Which honestly seems more realistic to me, aside from just quitting fighting crime. Which can't happen, otherwise we wouldn't have this story, right? And DC wouldn't make any money. This eventually leads him to Barry Allen, who refuses to give Bruce his Speed Force powers. So Batman, using the various rogues' weapons to fight off Barry, knocked him out. Once Barry was unconscious, Bruce tied him to the front of a cosmic treadmill-powered Batmobile and drove them both into the Speed Force. I don't even know how that happened or worked logically, but okay, you do you, Bat Marty. When entering the Speed Force though, Barry and Bruce ended up fusing together into an evil Batman with super speed and a lust for killing, while Barry's mind was trapped in Bruce's body. He then gets a visit from the Batman Who Laughs, who asks him to join the Dark Knights, whose goal is conquering the multiverse. Penultimately, into number 2, Savitar. As a fan of the Arrowverse, I felt like I needed to include one of the most interesting speedsters in the show. Savitar, while sharing a name with another evil speedster from the comics, is actually revealed to be a time remnant of Barry Allen in the show, being more of a future Flash than a Savitar. Honestly, he's like a combination of both. His story, though, is pretty messed up. In essence, making himself and having a classic chicken and the egg scenario. In the post-Flashpoint Arrowverse timeline, Savitar comes back from the future to kill Iris West before her and Barry get married. This causes Barry to create as many time remnants as possible, which is basically a clone of himself, in order to stop him. But Savitar kills all of them except one. The one that he spares then gets shunned by the rest of Team Flash for not being the real Barry Allen, even though he is still the real Barry. It's weird. So in an act of fury, the Time Remnant runs back in time, creating a new identity for himself as the first speedster and the god of speed known as Savitar. But the suit he wears allows him to travel at basically instantaneous speeds, which the show Flash has not been able to do at this point, even in recent seasons. And finally, and at number 1, Reverse Flash. I know what you're thinking, okay? Isn't Eobard just the Reverse Flash? Like, not actually a version of the Flash? In the main continuity, yes, but also thinking of the Flash Armageddon crossover, Barry Allen becomes the Reverse Flash, so this could be another literal evil version of the Flash. But in the Dark Multiverse Flashpoint story, Eobard also becomes the Flash, and he kind of becomes his own form of hero in a way. A dark, twisted, messed up hero, hell-bent on eradicating competing heroes in the universe, but still a form of hero, right? Technically. counts. And I mean, like, he's still scary, alright? And a version of the Flash, so this counts for this list. In a universe where Barry Allen dies while trying to get his powers back with Flashpoint Batman, aka Thomas Wayne. But once Thawne tried to stop the war between Aquaman and Wonder Woman by threatening them and killing Arthur, you know there's gonna be some hell to pay. So he sets on shaping the world in his own image. This involves preventing Batman from ever becoming Batman and instead creating his own superhero team, full of versions of characters we know and love, but all with Reverse Flash logos somewhere on their suits, usually. And I have to say, preventing Batman from being created is probably the smartest thing Eobard could have done, because either way, Batman is going to lead some form of resistance against you, so good on you. This is the smartest thing that any villain has ever done in the DC universe.
Number 10. Dark Multiverse Superman. Now, I don't know if this is laziness, but the Dark Universe version of Superman doesn't really get much justification as to why his mind snapped and he killed millions of people, his own family, and most of the other superheroes. The Batman of this universe, after seeing this Superman kill his own wife, and after he cuts off Batman's arm, decides that this guy just ain't it. And he transformed himself into a Doomsday Batman hybrid called the Devastator, and smashed down this Superman, poisoned him, and impaled him on spikes. A quick evil Superman story, but it was in service of an amazing Batman story. Number 9. Lex Luthor Superman. Okay, this evil Superman isn't technically Superman, but when Superman and Doomsday are both killed by each other, Earth Prime's Lex Luthor returns to Earth after getting bored of being the new Darkseid on Apokolips, and learns of Superman's demise. Lex Luthor, with the help of his superpowered armor, steps in and makes himself the new Superman. I mean, not really Lex, but sure, we'll just give this one to you. Now, he had some good intentions, but it's Lex Luthor. He wasn't exactly the best person for the job. After having multiple falling outs with the new real Superman, pre-Flashpoint Clark Kent, he gave up the title of Superman and started acting as an independent hero, and sometimes a villain. Number 8. Parallax Superman. In this story, Parallax, the physical embodiment of fear, took over the body of Kal-El, making him submit to Laxi by torturing children, and uses this Kryptonian's powers to confront Sinestro, who traps the cocky super entity and teleports him to the caves of Quard, where Sinestro tries to take Parallax out of Superman's body for his own evil plans. But surprise! Parallax has already escaped Superman's body, and a battle ensues between Sinestro and Parallax, leading to the surface of Quard. Superman escapes from the caves and, in a last-ditch attempt to defeat the entity, steals Sinestro's power ring and coerces Parallax to swallow his super butt whole. Superman is a clever guy though. He traps Parallax inside the power ring and the day is saved. Gosh, a lot of plot twists there. Number 7. Hank Henshaw. Hanky Boy here was already a villain of Superman's from past stories, but when Superman was killed by Doomsday, Hank, unable to directly get revenge against Superman himself, decided to attack his reputation instead. Come on, man. He's already dead. Not cool, dude. Not cool. After creating a Kryptonian cyborg body using the birthing matrix, he took on the guise of Supes and went about destroying Superman's memorial plaque. Then he saved the president to get clout so the president would recognize him as the real Superman. Eventually, he and Mongol destroyed Coast City, and the real reborn Superman, with the help of others, defeated and discredited him. At least he looked really cool. Number 6. Overman. Now this version of our favorite red and blue man didn't end up in Kansas when he was ejected from Krypton. No. This Kal-El found himself in Sudetenland, Germany in 1938 and was acquired by a certain mustached fascist. With Kal and Kryptonian tech, the Reich were obviously able to win World War II and rule over the entire planet. Later, Overman would become disgusted with the stashed man when the Holocaust had been finalized, although he still served the state. It's kind of a weird set of morals there, dude. Eventually, he was cloned and received a love in the form of Overgirl, but after her death, he was completely heartbroken, and he supplied information to the freedom fighters who long opposed the fascists, which eventually led to the death of the new Reichman, the Justice League, and the city of Metropolis. With the grief of all these losses holding him down, he was overthrown by his friend. Damn. Kinda hard to feel bad for him though. Number 5. Injustice Superman. The Superman of the Injustice universe has pretty much the same history as the baseline Superman, but when the Joker kidnaps the pregnant Lois Lane, it lures Superman into a trap of fear gas. In his poisoned state, Superman hallucinates his true love as the villain Doomsday and instantly attacks, flying Lois and his unborn child into space, killing them, and inadvertently causing a nuclear bomb to destroy his city, Metropolis. After suddenly losing his city, wife, and baby, Superman goes into an honestly understandable rage, bursting into the interrogation room where Batman is learning the true intentions of the Joker and plunges his super fist right through the guy's chest. Following these events, Superman takes control of the Earth and rules it as a tyrant. Fortunately, Batman forms an insurgency to try and beat this corrupted Superman, eventually enlisting the aid of another Earth's Justice League, and I guess technically whoever plays the tied-in video game, to defeat him and save the day. Number 4. Brutal. Brutal is a cloned version of Superman, but unlike a certain bizarre version of Superman, who we will talk about later, don't worry, this duplication was done by none other than Darkseid himself. He raised the resulting clone into a soldier, nay, a weapon, and unleashed him on the superheroes of Earth 2, along with Steppenwolf and the other Hunger Dogs, but they don't really matter. When Steppenwolf tried to subvert his master Darkseid and take Earth as his own, brutally murders him with his heat vision, establishing his devotion to his Lord Darkseid. Let me make my intentions clear. Hail Darkseid! Which is just a sweet line after you murdered a general of Darkseid. The Earth became lost to Darkseid's minions, and eventually, after a lot of other stuff, Kal-Zod, Earth 2's Superman, faced Brutal in combat, and after a furious battle, showed that Brutal was just an imitation, and a cheap one at that, as his body began to deteriorate, and the day was saved. Again. Hey guys, just wanted to say a quick thanks for watching. We hope you're enjoying the video. If you are, why not head on over to that pretty little subscribe button and give us a follow and a like. You guys are the reason we can even be here in the first place. Love you! Okay, on to the top 3. Number 3. Super Doom. On Earth 45, Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, and Clark Kent are scientists instead of reporters, and they use their smarts to build a machine that can turn thoughts into reality, which, I mean, how the heck did they think that was a good idea? I can think of 10 things right now that should never become reality. Anyways, using the aforementioned thought-to-form machine, they try to create a being called Superman, who would be capable of doing amazing things and who could save worlds. But when they are forced to sell their idea to Overcorp, they decide to rebrand and end up creating a monstrosity. Superman, the Last Night of Tomorrow, or Super Doom. With a corporate-fueled agenda of destroying all competition, Super Doom quickly becomes the strongest super being on its own planet, and then enters the bleed space to murder all other versions of Superman. Of course, bad guys never win forever, so after defeating and devouring multiple different Supermen of multiple different Earths, he was stopped by the Superman and Lex Luthor of Earth 22, who stranded him between universes. He's since been used in a few other storylines and remains one of the most formidable evil versions of Superman to this day. I mean, he didn't even die. Number 2. Bizarro. When Lex Luthor gets the plans for a device called the Duplicator Ray, he modifies the device and uses it to try and create a clone of Superman, who will follow his every order without question. But since our Lex can't seem to do anything right, the resulting doppelganger is an unintelligent, unpredictable, backwards version of Superman, eventually known as Bizarro. Bizarro is a main villain for Superman, appearing in many stories, and I'm so glad because, gosh, he's just so fun to see! Eventually, Bizarro gets a case of the blues and longs for love, and gets the hots for Lois Lane. Lois isn't really interested, but being the great gal that she is, she uses the Duplicator Ray on herself, creating a Bizarro Lois Lane. And the two eventually leave Earth to settle another Earth-like planet they fittingly name Bizarro World. Or, and forgive me here, Hetre, which is Earth backwards, which they populate with more and more duplicates of themselves. But don't worry! They have pretty rock necklaces that say Bizarro and Bizarro Lois 1, so we don't get confused. Number 1. Ultraman. In the universe of Earth 3, things are a little turned upside down. Instead of being driven by the morals of good versus evil, the people of this universe are inspired by strength above all else. I can't really relate. Born on a dying Krypton where Kryptonians evolved to be empowered by green kryptonite to a maniacal version of Jor-El aptly named Jor-Il, baby Kal-Il is jettisoned off to Earth. But instead of the classic morals, he's instead inspired by his father to become the strongest possible being with absolutely no weaknesses in himself and the others around him. When Kal lands on the farm of Johnny and Martha Kent, he uses pieces of green kryptonite to empower himself and forces the dysfunctional couple to be his parents until the totally mature age of 7, when he murders them both and sets the farm ablaze. Eventually, this self-proclaimed Ultraman murders the President of the United States of America and takes control of the world, creating the crime syndicate of America with other evil alternate versions of classic characters, including an evil Wonder Woman, Superwoman, and evil version of Batman, Owlman, who have a pretty toxic love triangle.
Alright, at number 10 we have the very silly but nonetheless evil Super Enemies. In the 1970s animated TV show Super Friends, there's an episode in 1979 called Universe of Evil, where Superman travels to an alternate universe to meet the evil counterparts to the Super Friends, very creatively named the Super Enemies. And the team is made up of all those bad guys we've all known so well and grown up with. You know, like Aquaman with an eye patch, and tinted red Batman, and oh, who could forget the iconic alien monkey Gleek. What a trailblazing team of supervillains they were. But as much as I roast them, they do actually pose a decent threat to Superman in this storyline, to the point where they team up with the military armed with kryptonite weapons, and even bring in their own version of Superman, giving our Superman a good old run for his money. But luckily, Superman Prime finds something called an antimatter flask, which turns all the super enemies back to being good again. Thank God Aquaman retires that eye patch and is no longer so intensely menacing looking. What a relief.
Number 9. Justice League of Assassins. Unfortunately, this evil Justice League didn't stick around too long. Being first introduced in Superman Volume 4, number 15 in March 2017, the Justice League of Assassins on Earth 14 were a group of augmented, mostly non-superpowered soldiers led by the obviously powerful Superman. The team was made up of Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash, Batman, Harley Quinn, and Green Lantern. With the exception of Superman, their powers relied mainly on weapons and technology, but primarily they used advanced firearms. Ultimately, they were all slaughtered, with this Superman being kidnapped by Prophecy, which is a shame, because this team looked super cool and they seemed to inhabit a pretty dark and grim looking post-apocalypse. Could have been very interesting.
At number 8 we have the Conglomerate. This group is basically a bizarro version of the Justice League created by Booster Gold. The group is formed after Booster's departure from the Justice League International due to a lack of respect from his peers. When Booster first fails to bring together a competent group of heroes to form the first iteration of the Conglomerate, someone named Claire Montgomery comes in to manage the group. With her, she brings along the likes of Deadeye, an alternate Green Arrow, Fiero, a guy with fire powers, Frostbite, an ice power guy, Elastaman, a stretchy man, Element Man, much like Metamorpho, Scarab, a knockoff of Blue Beetle, and Slipstream, a dollar store Flash. When they engage in a small friendly skirmish with the Justice League International, the fight quickly turns serious, and everyone learns at once that these new members have actually been brought from an antimatter world called Quard, and they're basically just entirely evil, and always had been. Luckily the JLI take them down, but it's a close one.
Number 7. Squadron Sinister. This isn't so much an evil alternate Justice League as this team actually appears in the Marvel universe. But I'm gonna count it because I'm just stubborn like that. The original Squadron Sinister was created as a sort of obvious play on DC Comics Justice League characters Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, and the Flash, with the characters Hyperion, Nighthawk, Dr. Spectrum, and the hilariously named Wizard, respectively. The team was created by the Grand Master after he encountered the Squadron Supreme, and they first appeared in Avengers number 69 when they were pitted against the Avengers in a game between the Grand Master and Kang the Conqueror. They're bad guys who are counterparts to 4 members of the Justice League. I gotta stop justifying my reasons. They're on the list. Argue with me down below if you don't like it.
Alright, at number 6 we have the Justice Lords. Appearing in the animated series Justice League in the episode titled A Better World, this evil team is led by a radicalized Superman. Radicalized because he witnesses Lex Luthor murder the Flash and threaten nuclear war. So, Superman decides he'd abandon the typical hero's code of conduct and kill the bald tyrant himself. And in this alternate universe, Lex Luthor isn't just some super rich supervillain working away and hiding, he's actually worked his way to becoming the President of the United States. So, after his death, there is a power vacuum to be filled. And who would be better rulers than this evil alternate Justice League? No one.
They didn't think so anyway, so they take over and put in place a totalitarian government with the justification being that they are protecting humanity from itself. And they start calling themselves the Justice Lords, which, I mean, you should sort of know you're the bad guys when the word Lord is in your title. Luckily, the real Superman is able to catch on and take them out of power before anything goes too far.
Number 5, Injustice League. Okay, so we have the Crime Syndicate of America, but there was also a team of villains put together to fight that team of villains. So, sort of technically making these villains heroes, but also not really because they're still villains. Right? The important information here is that the Injustice League, at least the one I'm referring to, was formed to combat the Crime Syndicate of America from Earth 3. The team's villainous members included BIZARRO, Black Manta, Black Adam, Catwoman, Deathstroke, Sinistero or Parallax, Captain Cold, and they were formed and led by Lex Luthor. The team first appeared in Forever Evil number 3 in January of 2014 when the Crime Syndicate of America invaded the Prime Earth universe and tried, and very nearly did, take over the world.
At number 4, we have the Injustice Syndicate. I know, lots of groups with Syndicate and Injustice in their names. Well, that's because this evil version of the Justice League actually exists as a sort of combination between the Injustice League and the Crime Syndicate, both of which are included in this list respectively. Appearing in Batman the Brave and the Bold, in the episode called Deep Cover for Batman, Batman manages to travel to their evil dimension and infiltrate their operations disguised as Owlman. He sees that this group comprises of an evil version of himself, along with other evil alternate versions of other heroes he knows and works with. While eavesdropping, Batman learns of their plans to, destroy other universes entirely, which of course, he feels is something he needs to put a stop to. And it can't wait, naturally. So he decides to take all of them on himself, and because he's Batman, and it is his TV show after all, he wins. Those universes can thank him later.
Number 3, the Joker League. In Emperor Joker number 1 of October 2000, the Joker has gained 99.99% of the reality warping powers of the 5th dimensional being, Mr. Mxyzptlk, and he used them to completely warp the world into an insane offshoot of our real world. In this Joker world, he has put together an evil, insane version of the Justice League called the Joker League of Anarchy. The team members include some characters we've seen before, such as BIZARRO number 1, Enigma, who's the Riddler, Gravedigger Lad, who is actually Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane, Harley Quinn, and Poison Ivy. He has also created completely new characters that are wholly original to this story: Ignition, Bounty, Schism, and Scorched. He even has Lex Luthor as a jester. They are basically just the henchmen of this already pretty much all-powerful version of the Joker. Just another way of keeping him entertained, it seems.
At number 2, I'm putting the Injustice League from the video game Injustice: Gods Among Us. Most of us already know how this story goes, but in case you don't, this is one of the cooler and more well-written storylines about an evil alternate version of the Justice League. In most cases on this list, these evil groups are created by an alternate reality, which is always fun but pretty simple to come up with. But this storyline shows a radicalized Superman leading the Justice League to the dark side. And like I said, this isn't because he's an evil version of Superman or one that's possessed by some evil force. He's genuinely turned to evil after the Joker tricks him into killing Lois Lane. So to combat this new unexpected evil force, Batman decides to bring in other members from the Justice League from another universe, and the result is some pretty great fighting gameplay. And right as the game was being released, a comic book series of the same name was also being released in tandem, serving as a prequel to the game, where you can derive general story points from the game itself. Most of the backstory I just explained actually comes from the comics. It's cool to see the video game and comic book worlds working in tandem, and they make a pretty cool new storyline that I figure has to be ranked pretty high on this list.
Number 1, the Crime Syndicate of America. The Crime Syndicate of America hails from the strength-obsessed Earth 3, and is a twisted, evil version of many characters who make up the main universe Justice League of America. Its members include Ultraman in place of Superman, Thomas Wayne Jr., aka Owlman, and Alfred Pennyworth as the Outsider, Superwoman, who was Lois Lane at one point and Donna Troy at another, the cowardly Harold Jordan and Vengeance vengeful John Stewart, who were both Power Ring, which are evil Green Lanterns, at different times, John Allen and John Chambers separately also as Johnny Quick, Atomica, Sea King, Deathstorm, Grid, and John Johns. They come into contact with the main universe many times, and they almost always spell out bad news, as you'd expect from the antithesis to the Justice League of America.